How an engine idles is something we always have to be concerned with. And the main way of controlling how an engine idles is by controlling the amount of air that comes into the intake. The more air, the higher the idle, and the less air, the lower the idle. Idle problems have always been a challenge, and the newest technology for controlling the idle is called electronic throttle control, or commonly referred to as drive-by-wire. But what exactly does that mean? Before we look at this newer technology, let's look at how it's been done in the past. Before we had electronic throttle control, both the idle and the throttle were controlled by two different methods. The throttle was controlled by your foot pressing on the accelerator pedal. That was attached to one end of a cable, and the other end was attached to the actual throttle plate inside the throttle body. And as you moved your foot, the cable attached would move the throttle plate in the throttle body, opening it for more or less air to enter the intake. And for the computer to manage the engine speed, there was a throttle position sensor mounted on the throttle body that would report that position of the throttle plate to the computer so it could make its adjustments. The idle was controlled by an idle air control valve. Here's various styles that they've had in different manufacturers. Now, using an idle air control valve, here's how it's been controlled in the past. Fresh air comes in here, goes into the intake. Now you know when you're at idle, the throttle valve is closed. And that's allowing for a fixed minimum amount of air to pass by that throttle valve. But as you know, idle speed is just enough to keep the engine running without stalling out. Occasionally the engine idle will vary for multiple reasons, so the idle speed needs to vary. In order to idle correctly, more air must bypass that fixed throttle valve. The idle air control valve, or solenoid, it would open and allow more air to flow, which allowed the idle to vary as it was needed. Now, what is commonly referred to as drive-by-wire changed all of that. Electronic throttle control. They have actually removed the cable and the idle control valve as well. Now it is all controlled electronically. So now when you press your foot on the accelerator pedal, there is no cable attaching it to the throttle body. Instead, there is what is called an accelerator position sensor attached to that pedal. It simply reports how far you are pressing on the pedal, and it changes as you change your foot position. There's no cable movement at all. The information from the accelerator position sensor reports to the computer, and the computer now moves the throttle plate electronically. So without a cable, how does it do that? Well, with an electric motor. And that leads us to this video. Now keep in mind, as this new technology has developed, so have the systems to control it. And when you take into fact all the different manufacturers have their own ideas about how to do it, it's a lot of different systems, but they're all trying to do the same thing, control the throttle plate without a cable. In this video, I'm going to explain one of Toyota's earlier versions of how to do just that. Now in this case, we're working on a 2000 Toyota Tundra. Now keep in mind that this is a 2000 year model. In other words, it's an early version of this technology. And if you have one of these, first you're going to be confused because you're going to see that it still has a cable. And I said that they've done away with the cable. Well, that's true eventually, but in the early systems the cable was still there. But why? The gas pedal moves a cable which moves the accelerator position sensor, and that's mounted on the side of the throttle body. It then tells the computer what the throttle plate position is and what the driver desires. In response, the computer drives a servo motor, or the throttle control motor, on the driver's side of the throttle body to open the throttle plate to its desired position. Next to the throttle control motor is the TPS, or throttle position sensor, which senses the position of the throttle plate, and it provides feedback to the computer so that it can control the throttle plate as you change positions with your foot. So why is there a cable? Well, the cable and the mechanism under the accelerator position sensor serves as a backup function. In the event that the accelerator position sensor, throttle sensor, or the computer fail and doesn't work properly, you can press the throttle down with your foot a long way and it will still open the throttle plate manually. It won't open very far, but it puts the computer in what is called limp home mode, and you can still drive slow until you can get it serviced. Now, needless to say, it makes the driver very much aware that there is a serious problem. Now, in part 2 of this video, I'm going to concentrate on the actual throttle control motor.